I don't have the time or the inclination to get into the business and run it. So the deal is quite simple. You do all the work and I provide the money.
Because we're opening the second club, we're going to have a memberships. We're going to have a lot of different new features.
Some people really get on my nerves on the golf course. And
Matiss is one of them.
No.
I was like, where's this going? No,
it wasn't enough just to squat in my house, use my driver, my housekeeper. He went and raided the wine cellar as well, you know, aka a massive piss up.
Wow,
we're on.
We are on. Cheers. We start like the last one.
Cheers.
And then Howard's going to say, what are we drinking?
Good health.
Howard, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining the podcast.
It's what I like to do on a Sunday night.
It is late.
Well, it involves drink. I'm pretty happy.
What are we drinking?
This is a magnum of my Howard's Folly Reserve from, is it 2015? 16. Yeah, and you know all about magnums, don't you, Magnus? About Matiss. The magnum is the perfect size bottle for a gentleman's lunch for two, provided one of them isn't drinking.
Who said it, Giannis? Who said it? I told you this.
You said it?
Winston Churchill.
Okay, you did.
Yeah,
you didn't mention it.
Reportedly, that's true, but I've looked it up just on the methods of research, and I can't find it. And you can find all his funny quotes, and there are a lot of them. He was a pretty witty guy. You remember the famous one about he meets some woman who says to him something like, "If I was your wife, I would poison you," because he was being really obnoxious. And he said, "If I was married to you, I'd drink it."
That's one of the famous ones again.
Yeah, but he was, he supposedly said that, but I can't find it. I'm not sure he did, but it doesn't matter. Never let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Yeah, guys, so welcome everyone again. And if we did the first episode in Latvian, so probably we needed to change a little bit. And straight up.
If we did this in Latvian, I would be struggling a bit.
Yeah, a bit, probably a bit.
A little bit.
But now we change the language, but the format and the team stay the same. Let's do it. What's the straight translation?
I don't know. If we translate the name of the podcast, it's Let's Do It.
Yeah, basically.
But Let's Do It. Howard doesn't know how, because that's your story, how it became Let's Do It.
Yeah. So basically, we are here. We did the pilot episode, and Matiss said many people like the stories with Michel's, his playing career, his professional stories, and as well many of those minutes in that first pilot episode included you, Howard.
Oh.
So Howard...
he needs to get out more, doesn't he?
Yeah. Howard Bilton with us today, and
well, probably compared to him, I appeared quite interesting. You know, I may be dull, but
I skipped those times when he was speaking.
Yeah, okay.
But I think if I did the introduction last time, you should do today, because I know Howard for what? 1 hour, 30 minutes?
Yeah.
So you know more, man, and you have to start. Yeah.
So first of all, we have to start, and Howard is going to have to answer why is he here, because he's been involved in what we have behind, as we covered in the first episode as well, that without Howard, I think we wouldn't be sitting here.
Okay, well, let's deal with this myth for a kick-off, actually, because Matiss thinks that MH Padel stands for Matiss Howard Padel. No. Stands for me, Howard Padel. Or Mr. Howard Padel. But, you know, he's happy. He thinks his name's on it. It isn't.
That was his speech at the opening
I think I might have
club.
mentioned that before, yeah.
Then it's 100% true what I heard about the first story. At least he told me the first story. He checked the WhatsApp, and on the WhatsApp image there was saying, what was the saying? They say you are what you eat,
but I don't remember eating a fucking legend.
So basically, this quote goes
still there.
It goes through and through, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks Howard for joining. So Howard is
my pleasure.
Is part of MH Padel, and it's both of our journey and I don't know, ambition and everything together And as you know, in the first episode, I told the story how it all started, and it's very nice that Howard is here this week and he can join. And I think it's going to be very interesting for people to hear more about Howard and how he ended up being investor in a paddle club in Latvia, which is quite an interesting story itself.
Yeah.
And
I explain it that I live in Portugal, so naturally I wanted a paddle club in Latvia.
That's what I wanted to ask,
yeah,
man.
people go, what? Yeah. Well, you told the story already, but we met in Hong Kong. And,
so we met 7 years
Before
ago?
COVID, huh?
Yeah, way
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
So I switched clubs, yeah. So I told the story in English again. So when I moved to Hong Kong, 2015, I was in one club, and then I had to move 2017, and that's where the story is about the WhatsApp picture.
Okay.
Because I replaced Alan. So you
Yes.
used to play with Alan.
Yeah.
And then Andy Brothers, who was running the tennis kind of management company, who was responsible for tennis at the club. And I was back in Latvia, actually, because I left American club. And the only way for me to get back, I told Andy, the only way I'm going back to Hong Kong if I'm getting a head pro position at LRC. Because I was got offered the cricket club, country club, but didn't want to stay in Hong Kong. Then Alan left and the position came open. And of course, when I go there, I have to contact all the clients that used to play with.
I suppose LRC was the best tennis club.
It's the best tennis club.
Yeah, by
so it had
some
10
way.
courts, and it's a perfect location, best tennis club, strongest team, strongest players. So coaching-wise, also it was a lot more challenging and more interesting. And I had to contact all the clients that the ex-head pro was coaching. And so I'm going through the list. And for Howard, for some reason, he loves to communicate by email. And everything has to be by email. But on that list, there was only the telephone number, and no email. So I saved that number. I didn't pay much attention then. Then I'm slowly getting in contact with everyone. And then I see it's a very interesting picture. So I press on the picture. Like, so this guy is going to be the real, Hong Kong
Nightmare.
nightmare, full of himself. You can't get a picture like I'm a fucking legend,
Yeah.
But then the first lesson, we had so there was 2 indoor courts in Hong Kong. It's very unusual because none of the courts actually have indoor courts. Chinese Recreation Club has 2 indoor courts.
Yeah, I'm told there's some. I've never seen any.
CRC
other
has 2 indoor, but no one else.
Yeah.
So we have an indoor court session, and Howard shows up 1 hour late. First lesson.
Yeah.
It was 3 p.m. on Thursday. And I have the next lesson already. And anyway, we had a quick joke. Next week he comes and, I think we played tennis for 15 minutes and we were chatting for 45, sitting on a bench. And I got to know him. He got to know me. And there was some kind of interesting feeling already going on that I really, really liked him as a person. And
I wish it was reciprocated.
Look, I wanted to intervene here because I have heard many stories and he has told me many stories. And actually one of the times when we started business together, it showed up because he told me a story about the whole club and everything and how he met you. Yeah. But he's like a guy who gives compliments. Like he probably gave 10 compliments during that conversation. And now you have to make that story from your side. Yeah. You come to the club and you're Howard, you come and this guy says, no, Howard, not today. You have to meet next day. So how was that time looking at that conversation and first meeting with Matiss?
Oh, well, that was easy. I looked at my phone and, oh, shit, I've got it wrong, yeah. So that was easy. I mean, it was my problem. I don't know why I thought it was an hour earlier than it was. But, I thought, oh, that's a bit of a bummer. I seem to recall that what pissed me off the most was the lift was out of order, so you had to walk up about 10 flight steps to get there. And but anyway, that was probably enough exercise for the day anyway. So we got that bit out of the way. But yeah, it was a bit aggravating. If the lift had been working, I don't think I'd have cared too much. But yeah.
So lift is because Hong Kong is obviously not a lot of space. So the indoor court was not like in Latvia, ground floor. It was on the 5th floor. Yeah. So the indoor court.
5 high floors.
5 high floors. So
like
you had to walk the stairs, and they were not easy stairs.
That was a bit aggravating. But yeah, we had some good games.
And you kind of joked about it, before that you live in Portugal and that's the best business idea is to open a paddle club in Riga. But if you start from the early days, you have a massive company. It's a financial company, probably with taxes. Taxes is the most things you do, and financial advices.
Yeah, we are tax advisors, I suppose, and we are specialising in offshore tax advice. So I have offices around the world in all these funny places like Mauritius, Cyprus, Malta, Isle of Man, Guernsey, and various. And that business has grown considerably over the years, and actually represents my whole working life, you might say. So I started that business in 1987 in Gibraltar, which remains head office and the biggest office. And it was me and a secretary, a personal assistant in a rented shared space office above a frozen food store down a pokey road at the back of Gibraltar. And her name was Carol, the assistant, and she was really good in the mornings and absolutely hopeless after lunch. And it became apparent after a while that the litre bottle of mineral water was in fact vodka. And so I'd come in after a lunch break or anything and find her slumped over a typewriter. It was in the days of typewriters, that's how long ago this was. You know, so everything had to be hand corrected and everything, and she was just useless. And her husband was a submariner who were well known for their excesses, because they go, you know, underwater for 6 months, then come up and go lunatic. And I don't think that helped a lot, because he was away a lot, and then he came home and they just got on it together. I can just imagine them absolutely slaughtered at home, and I think that's what happened. So that was tricky to start with.
But and then it started there, and you kind of joked about it, but it's basically the joke itself. It's a reality. And then you meet Matiss, and I know that side of the story. Some would say it's a philanthropy stuff too. You mentioned those countries you work. It's basically the perfect beach holiday list. And then there comes Matiss from Latvia.
Yeah.
Come to Riga, yeah.
They have the saying in England, cold rainy day in Stoke, and probably it's same in Latvia, cold rainy day in Riga, and now you have a paddle club and second paddle club opening soon. So
I suppose that happened because we became quite good mates in Hong Kong, and then I had a house in Spain. I think this is my recollection of the story. I think you might have a slightly different one. And so he came down for a bit of a holiday. So we played a bit of tennis, and then the tennis club has some paddle tennis clubs. And I said, let's go and play paddle, which I don't think, if you'd seen it before, you'd never played it, had you?
That was the first time.
And I said, this is a good game. And, oh, right, interesting. And then a little while later, he's left Hong Kong, come back here, gives me a ring and says, there's no paddle tennis club in Latvia. But there are paddle tennis clubs in every country around Latvia. I think you said there was 20 in Estonia, 20 in Lithuania. There was about 500 in Sweden, growing fast in Finland, some in Denmark, but somehow nobody's done one here. So let's do one then. So that was it. Simple as that, really.
So Howard's story is mixed up because while I was in Hong Kong, I never went to Spain. So I only went to Spain after I was already home.
Okay. Well, the order of events might be wrong.
Order of events. So my recollection is a bit different.
All right.
So when I was...
Who drinks more?
I think you did.
But did you hear
All right. We'll
best
go
part?
with your version.
Did you hear the best part? At
What
the
is
end
the
of the sentence, he said, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, you see?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And now I have to tell Howard as well why we call it Let's Do It, because the first time we met,
it
was also, that's why we call the podcast the way we call it.
Yeah.
All right.
Just short story of it. I own a sports media company, and actually one of the ex-colleagues of Matiss called me 2 years ago, and at that time I was still working in television as a news presenter, sports news presenter, and he said, "Can you come and do some? Basically, it's like." BBC.
That was the first
Latvia.
Latvian championships we had. So we were open only for 6 months.
Right.
The club. So we needed some publicity.
Yeah. And
so we were trying to get as many contacts as we can from the television to come and make this sport
make some
more
content.
popular.
And he called me, and I was like, "Let's see what I can do." I didn't come but we took the YouTube videos and we made a kind of news story that there's a new sport growing up here in Latvia, basically popular in Spain and other countries. But then the next year we start looking for new clients, and MH Padel pops up, and I spoke with Matiss, and we had one meeting, second meeting, we came to the next, it was second Latvian championship, and then during the first it was our kind of pitch, and I spoke with Matiss, and I thought it's gonna be like 30 or 40 minute talk. I just gave him ideas, what we can do, what we gonna do, and basically there was no questions, nothing. He just said, yeah, let's do it. And when I met my colleague, who is our Jamie, as we call it, behind the cameras,
basically Joe Rogan, Jamie.
Basically, I just said, and he asked me, so how was Matiss? Did he like the idea? How he is as a person? I said, he just replied, let's do it. And it kind of synced to my head that it has been the same story probably with Matiss, probably if you mentioned with you, and as well with my life, that whenever good idea and reasonable idea comes, I just understand that first you have to do it, then you understand the problems and the mistakes you make, and then you just solve them. So and that there started our kind of partnership, and yeah, it's funny that you ended with that kind of words.
I like the word yes way more than I like the word no. So it's mostly a yes.
Yeah.
And but where did we end up in the last conversation?
Yeah, and you started.
So my story,
your story.
When so I was in LRC, and then one summer, Mike was coming to Hong Kong. Because I got him to Hong Kong to...
We've just demonstrated what your cameraman said, is that if we want to drink, we've got to turn the microphone away and listen to him. So I like to drink, but I'm not sure I like to drink that much, you know.
Did you hear what he said?
No, I wasn't listening.
Like listening to my sparkling personality. But anyway, so that one summer, that was a COVID summer. And Howard was going away for a month. And Mike was coming to Hong Kong, and I asked Howard if I can stay at his place.
Typical Latvian.
But well, it wasn't offered, so I invited myself, so sorry, Howard.
Yeah.
But it kind of made, I said, why not? So he had a dog. It was, I could look after a dog and also live in a 5-story house, which is like a small bonus, but the dog was...
He didn't mind having the full-time housekeeper and the driver either.
I was lucky, yeah.
Which dog was it?
Damson.
It wasn't Buster. It was
Damson. And Howard never came back to Hong Kong. So for 2 years I was staying at the house.
Yeah.
But for us also it was very difficult because the club was keep getting closing and open because Hong Kong was so strict. And that's one of the reasons why Howard never came back, because you had to do 2 or 3 weeks in a hotel. You couldn't open a window. It was full quarantine. And
well, for the first year, I left Hong Kong after 28 years of living in Hong Kong in June 2020. And I left with a view to going back in September 2020 after the summer. I mean, Hong Kong's intensely hot and sweaty over July and August. So most people leave and go to Europe or somewhere, or Thailand. And I was going back to England or Spain, Portugal or whatever. And after I left, they shut it down. So for a year, even though I'm a permanent resident and have the right of abode in Hong Kong, there was no way back because they said you couldn't. But in any case, because you couldn't, there was no flight. So it was physically impossible, even if it had been legal. And that was for a year. And then for the next year, you could go back, but you had to quarantine in a hotel room for 3 weeks on your own. And as I said to people at the time, I couldn't actually imagine anything worse than spending 3 weeks alone with me in a hotel room. I think, to quote the expression I used at the time,
Say the exact
I think
expression.
I would sooner staple my penis to a burning building. And it was just, even if I'd been willing, it was impractical because my daughter was at school in the UK, so I'd have to do 3 weeks quarantine. Even if I missed every other time opportunity to see her, that would be 6 weeks in Hong Kong, 3 weeks in a hotel, fly out again, rinse and repeat. There's no way.
Prisoner.
Yeah, so it just wasn't practical, possible, and I wasn't going to do it. And then I was waiting it out, and after 2 years of basically hanging out in Portugal, waiting for Hong Kong to reopen, and I went to Portugal because I'd already been making wine there. There was something to do there. I could go and watch my grapes grow, which is fascinating, as you can imagine. And but I was waiting and living in temporary accommodation, as my son was there. I was camping out in his spare room. That's not really the way it's supposed to be, I'd bought the bloody house as well when I'm a guest in his house, which I bought, and then hotels various. I spent a lot of time in the Lapa Palace Hotel, which is amazing. And, I used to walk in there. Oh, welcome home, Mr. Bilton. We've got your usual room ready, and everything worked great, and it was quite nice, but it's not home, is it? And so two years after that, I said, I can't do this anymore, I've worked my ass off for 40 years to have a certain standard of living, and this is not it. So I've got to make a decision. So I'm going to make a decision. The decision is I've left. Bought a house in Estremoz where the winery is, while my apartment, which coincidentally I'd bought and was supposed to be in Lisbon and supposed to be delivered in May 2020 and had been much delayed, so that wasn't available. And that got the keys were delivered in September 23. So over 3 years late, but for Portugal, that's pretty good. We have the joke, which I've told a few people, but not in Latvia, about the Spaniard talking to the Portuguese and saying to the Portuguese, do you have anything in your language, the equivalent to our mañana? And the Portuguese replies, well, nothing which conveys quite that same sense of urgency. And that is what it's like. Things do not happen quickly. So all this time, I'm living in temporary accommodation and just thinking, this is no way to live. So eventually ended up selling the house remotely, packing it up remotely, 28 years of accumulated nonsense, most of which you'd probably thrown away, and shipping it all to Portugal and sorting it out there. And that was the end of Hong Kong for me. And I suppose in the meantime, before I'd left, the demonstrations had started, and then we had the massive crackdown on the pro-democracy movement, and China basically took over, overrode what had been the basic law in certain areas. And you're not really allowed to talk about this because that's an offence. I don't know whether pointing out it's an offence to talk about it is an offence. It probably is. But, the atmosphere had changed, and as far as I was concerned, not for the better. So I suppose a few things combined and meant that I suddenly found that my visit to Portugal had become a permanent move without me sort of realising it. But, a lot worse things have happened to many, many people, You can't really complain about being a refugee when you've got resources and you don't have to float over there on the back of a door or something, It's, we must put these things in perspective and stop moaning about it. But at the time, it was not ideal, let's put it that way.
You mentioned moving to Portugal because there was a winery, but I heard the start in Gibraltar, which is basically next to inside of the Spain.
Yeah.
Did you had any thoughts about Spain or?
Yeah, I did. I started making wine in Portugal in 2005, but we started looking at doing something in wine with some mates a lot earlier than that. And various plans sort of got bandied around, never came to fruition, and the original band of brothers who were going to do it had sort of dispersed and lost interest. But yeah, at the time when we started looking to do something in wine, the obvious place to have done it would have been Western Australia, Margaret River, which was just starting to get a reputation for small-scale, really high-quality wineries, and was close, but nearly everybody who was being involved or wanted to be involved as European would probably going to end up in Europe. So it's a long way and too far. And, half the thing is you want to be able to walk along your vines and, look knowledgeable and sup your own booze in your own premises. So Europe it had to be, and I think we quickly concluded that France was going to be too expensive to do anything. Nobody knew anything about Italy, so the other alternatives were Spain or Portugal, and I knew both pretty well. I'd lived in Spain, but I'd been visiting Portugal for since '87 when I first started in Gibraltar. But mainly I met an interesting Australian guy, and yeah, you're right, they don't normally exist, interesting Australians, but this guy is. And yeah, you know, nobody's perfect, that's his cross to bear. You know, my son always tells the joke about what's the worst thing about being bitten by a spider.
You have to be Australian?
You're probably Australian. Anyway, this guy's the rock star of Portuguese wine, and I bumped into him in the course of looking around, I suppose, David Baverstock, and a real good bloke, and I thought, I'd like to do something with you. And so he was Portugal, so Portugal it was. And they have great, interesting grape varieties you don't find anywhere else. It was on a wave of popularity, we were told, but I've been hearing that for 30 years, and not sure that wave has ever arrived, but it's you know, it's increasingly being recognised as a quality wine production place. But really, I just wanted to work with him, and it's a financially stupid thing to do to make wine. But if you're going to do it, you need a USP, and the USP was him, because if I walk in anywhere and say, "Would you like to taste my Portuguese wine?" the answer is probably no, I'm not interested, and see yourself out, mate. And but if you say it's a David Baverstock wine, they go, oh, right, yeah, we definitely want to try that. So it gives you a head start.
So who is David Baverstock?
He's the Australian winemaker, the rock star. But yeah, he transformed Portuguese wine because he went there 40 years ago to do a vintage for Symington port, and basically never left. But throughout that 40-year period, he had had something to do with a large number of the very high-quality wines in Portugal. And he brought science. Laboratory analysis and chemical analysis was largely absent from the Portuguese wine scene. So without that, you get very inconsistent quality. And good winemaking is half art and it's half chemistry, science. And without the two together, you can have some hits, but you're going to have some misses as well, which was kind of what the wine scene then. And I remember tasting Portuguese wine, and some of it was amazing, and some of it, so, well, that tastes pretty good, but it's, to me, it tastes like somebody stirred a spoonful of mud into it or whatever. And it was very inconsistent, and he sorted all that out. So he's a rock star amongst Portuguese winemakers.
You mentioned it, but I wanted to ask that for one of the first questions, if we speak about the Howard's Folly wine. For me, maybe for others as well, first thought what comes into my mind when I talk or think about just wine business for the guys who made their financial wealth in different areas, financial areas or business or whatever. For me, it clicks, as you said. There's no money, there's no profit. It's not a profitable business. So, as Matiss mentioned, we're going to speak about business and that side of the life, how to make it profitable and how to make it in a, how do you call that? Maybe.
The economics of it don't stack up. It's a long-term project. You build up capital. You don't get income. So you're continually having to put money in, and but eventually you could probably cash in because you're building up capital. You're buying land, you're buying assets and stuff, and you continue. And as you expand, you need more of them. So you're continually putting money in. And the joys of being in business mostly are trying to take money out by way of dividend, which has been singularly absent, I can tell you. But, for me, it was a fun thing to do and a nice thing to do. But, I'm a pig farmer's son from Yorkshire, the Independent People's Republic of Yorkshire, the IPRY. So things for me have maybe come full circle. I mean, if you're a pig farmer in Yorkshire, the natural thing to do is be a lawyer, isn't it? So, I grew up on a pig farm in Yorkshire. And then I spent 40 years of my professional career pushing fresh air around in a circle, basically, And so it's nice to actually make things again. So it's you're in the fortunate position of being able to afford to go into this business, which is not financially remunerative, but there are a lot of fringe benefits. Wherever you go, you meet other winemakers. They give you the best hospitality. You have the most memorable times, and it's a doorway into that, an entry into that. So there are compensations, but essentially the French are really good at it because they've been doing it for 200 years, and it's a family business, and it gets handed down through the generations. And for me, it's become a generational thing. My son's now working in the business. In fact, I'm working in his business, it appears now, because he's largely taken over and seems to confuse me with somebody who gets paid because he keeps asking me to do these things for the business. But yeah, he'll see the benefit long term, I'm sure, and that's the ultimate aim, and I think we can get there.
So you said you grew up in Yorkshire, so you changed tea to wine, so one drink to another.
Yeah. I don't know where...
But actually,
Yorkshire tea is really popular, isn't it? It seems to be known all over the world. But of course, there's no tea grown in Yorkshire.
Okay. It was my... because
it's the myth.
I remember from...
But how did you get into wine?
Yeah, well...
Just probably drinking, huh?
Well, a lot of it was to do with that. But yeah, my father was... I suppose he was an entrepreneurial guy, but most of his business didn't work, to be honest. So... but one of them was wine. So at age 18, he opened what actually should have worked really well, which was a sort of wine warehouse, which was a novel concept where you bought by the case rather than the bottle, and you rocked up and did a tasting and took away cases of wine. And that is the exact same concept which Majestic Wine in the UK use, and it's hugely successful. And they've got branches in virtually every major city, and it's a huge business. And he started that business, but he had a partner, and it was under-resourced, I think. I mean, I was perhaps not in the best position to comment. But the partner pulled out, and it didn't really have a chance. But I worked there for a while. Originally, I helped him build the shop. I guess he was a very hands-on guy. And I remember actually putting in the electrical supplies and everything, which was not a good idea because I managed to electrocute myself quite badly.
So how old are you then?
I'd be 18 at that point. So I was after university, and before I took a year off and spent most of it, I had to earn some money to go to bar school, the law school for barristers. So I needed some money. So I took various jobs, and that was one of them. And we built the warehouse, and then I served wine and got to know it. You can only sell something well if you understand it yourself. So I'd actually read up about it, taste it. That was the research.
That's what I always
great.
say. We're just tasting. We're not drinking.
Yeah,
it's not drinking.
No,
we just taste it.
It's just taste.
But at what time comes the moment when you realize that you start to think, okay, now I kind of understand about wine, because I have a story about what happened. Basically, 1 week ago, I was visiting Georgia, and Georgia is a big wine country as well. So me and my good old friend from childhood, we are sitting, enjoying our dinner. The dinner is really nice, like a food, all the tables with the Georgian food, the red wine, and I'm sitting, sipping that wine, and I'm thinking in my head, there's a really nice fizz to it, really nice fizz to the red wine. And my friend is sitting next to me, and he calls the waiter, and he's like, "This wine is bad." And the waitress, she comes, and she was like, "Oh yeah, this is bad." And I'm thinking with my fizz, I thought it
shouldn't be fizzy.
Yeah, it shouldn't be fizzy. And they're like speaking about this white wine where it can be like fizzy and stuff, and I'm thinking I was really enjoying this fizzy wine. So at what moment do you think? Maybe you must, Matiss, as well. From your experience, comes the point where you understand the wine and the wine business and the wines itself. You have to try just different. Basically, we're asking for guys to start drinking. But yeah, when do you understand that? Okay, this is nice, this is bad, this has this, like sommelier stuff.
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of nonsense talked about it, because if you like it, it's fine. It's all personal taste. And you can have 100 wine experts, and they may all agree that Chateau Latour is great wine, and say that Jacob's Creek is terrible wine. But if you like Jacob's Creek, it doesn't really matter. It's got to be a personal thing. And I would agree with them. Jacob's Creek is terrible wine, but if you like it, there's essentially nothing wrong with it. But what you will find is the more you drink, the more expensive your taste gets. So it's a mistake, really, to learn about wine. You will definitely want more and more expensive wine and appreciate more and more expensive wine and spend more and more of your money on a bottle of wine the more you drink. So there is an argument. Don't. just stick to the cheap stuff.
stick with beer.
Yeah.
When I was making a plan for this conversation, one of my questions, I think, in my phone was one of the mistakes you can do in your daily life or business life. Probably this is one of the things when you're a businessman and start to enjoy wine, and at start it's a $50 bottle, but later on it's 200, and it just grows, huh?
Yeah, it does. It really does. But you can still find great bottles at not very much money. I mean, I think you have to have a certain level of expenditure before you can even claim that the wine's good, because, I don't know, the effect of tax and duties and stuff is very, alters the picture entirely. But if you go to England, because of the duty and the VAT and everything, we say that an empty bottle with nothing in it costs about £7 on the shelves. So your bottle, label, capsule, cork, whatever you use to seal it, is £1. Your logistics to get it to England are £1. The duty, let's call it £3 in simple terms, because it's now banded through different things. And then you've got to pay VAT on everything. So they add all that up and you pay VAT at 20%. So £6-7 is an empty bottle. So if you buy a £6 bottle of wine in England, and it is still possible, the wine in it is worth nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. And to my mind, quite often it tastes like that. But if you like it, there is an argument, what's wrong with that? And it's not for me to try and dictate taste to people. But normally between £10 and £20, or closer to £20 these days, is going to get you something pretty decent. And then after that, it's fashion, it's scarcity value, it's all sorts of things. But you need to pay a little bit of money to get something which isn't going to give you a dreadful headache in the morning and is quite well made and doesn't have any faults and isn't churned out of an industrial type plant. And I'd say, our entry-level wine, for example, in Portugal is €12, and that's about the minimum I think you can really spend on a decent bottle these days to get something which isn't going to crucify you the following morning, which is quite important if you drink lots. So, yeah.
Last conversation, you mentioned wine in your life, and it happens to be that wine story was from Howard's house.
Yes. So Howard's one of the reasons why I enjoy wine, and I'm not having bad headaches.
Yeah,
because he really introduced me to.
He's one of the reasons why my cellar in Hong Kong is severely depleted.
No,
it wasn't enough just to squat in my house, use my driver, my housekeeper. He went and raided the wine cellar as well,
I think I didn't mention in the last podcast that I
was
had
the
access
story
to that. But
I wouldn't want to do a stock take because it would frighten me, I think.
We did a stock take. It was all good.
Yeah, right.
But though he just told me which bottles not to touch in any circumstances. Yeah. So I always remember those. But so how it really started was, again, we're going back to that first tennis lesson. And first...
I brought you a bottle of wine, didn't I?
You sent me 6 cases of your wine to my apartment.
What?
Yeah. You see how generous.
Must have been a rounding error.
Some logistics error.
No. So I was living in Stanley.
Oh, you were going to try and shift some, weren't you, amongst the members for me or something? Yeah.
No, you sent me just a taste.
Okay.
So when we were having that.
Why did I do that?
Because you're.
And probably he came hungover to the next training.
Yeah, maybe.
No, you don't have hangovers from Howard's Folly. What hangover?
Yeah. What hangover?
I haven't had a hangover in 7 years.
You're not drinking enough.
I'm drinking all the time.
Yeah.
That's the only way to not have a hangover. Anyway, it's a joke. So that first lesson, we were just started talking about everything, and I mentioned to Howard that since I moved to Hong Kong, I've kind of enjoyed a lot of tasting wine, because in Hong Kong you actually have everything there. All the wines are there. It's a big wine city, and it's a big wine scene, and people love wine. They're collecting wine, they're tasting wine. So even if I was invited by some of my clients to the wine dinner, they're bringing absolutely amazing wines. So each person basically for a dinner brings 1 bottle. So I have tasted some crazy wines, and I was like, oh, this is amazing, right? And we're just having a conversation with Howard, and a few days after, I remember the delivery guy calls me and well, I have a delivery and I haven't ordered anything. But for some reason, I remember then that Howard asked for my address. I was in Stanley, and he was on a trolley with 6 cases of wine. And I remember you sent me a case of each wine you were making.
Okay.
So it was 2011 Sognador at that time.
Okay. I think they got the order wrong. It's supposed to be a bottle of each.
So it was 6 cases. It was 6 cases. I was like, oh my God. I was like, okay. So this weekend is going to be a big party. I don't even like him, for goodness sake. I mean, why would I do that? But anyway, and then Howard offered me basically to join Howard's Folly and kind of help him with personal sales in Hong Kong. And we went to Macau, I remember once, in Macau Wine Society, because Macau basically is Portuguese history, right? So it was Portuguese colony and so on. So that wine as well. So we went to a few places, and Ritz-Carlton and amazing places to try to sell the wine. And also the Wine Society president was very familiar with Howard's Folly and a good friend of yours. And slowly, basically Howard had a men's cave in Hong Kong with 3 members. So I can't even describe the place. You go in this apartment, which is made of a wine cellar, pool table, small barber shop, and it's 3 members, and each of them had like 6 big wine fridges of their own wine collection. So we were doing wine tastings there. And then I thought, okay, I can invite every single client that I'm playing tennis with. And the first wine tasting we had like 60 people coming to taste Howard's Folly. And Howard was running the wine tasting, and I think it was a great event.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, that the man cave it was a great friend of mine, Tom Hall, a very wealthy and very generous man, and I got him into wine because he had hitherto just drank spirits, and then his doctor told him he couldn't drink spirits anymore, but there wouldn't be anything wrong with drinking a good bottle of red wine. So I said, okay, well, let me send you a few bottles to try, because if you're going to just drink a few bottles, you need to make them good ones. And he got well into it and then just went nuts and started collecting red wine. And then he'd invite me round to taste some of these bottles, and I'd bring him some more bottles to try. And rightly or wrongly, he credits me with getting him into wine. And so then he decided he wanted to turn a couple of apartments he had in Hong Kong into basically a gentleman's club for wine lovers. And he said, right, I've got the concept. This is it, Howard. It's going to be great. We can fit 26 wine fridges in there. So I'm going to invite 26 members to join, and we'll have a nominal joining fee, and then we'll all contribute to the expenses of running this thing. I'll put pool table in it, darts board, sports TVs, little barber's chairs, and it's going to be a man cave and our haven. And it was magnificent. You walk through the lobby of this apartment block, which was the shittiest looking lobby you've ever seen.
next to Shady Acres.
Yeah, it was up some
Beale Street.
Horrible back stairs, grubby as you like, and then used your thumbprint to get into this cave of wonderfulness. Anyway, this was the concept, and this is how it turned out in reality. But the other part of it was, he goes, why don't you ship some of your wine there? And I think I might have misunderstood the quantities again. I shipped quite a lot. And then he decided to put a lot of his really great wines in there. And he rang me up and he said, got a bit of a problem here, because those 26 wine fridges, I put your wine away and I put mine away, and they're all full. So we're only going to have 2 members, and it's you and I, and that's it. I said, all right, fine. And then I said, well, what do I owe you for this thing? Oh, yeah, we'll sort that out later. And I don't think he would ever let me pay for anything. And but it was magnificent. And half of it was the massive surprise after you'd gone through this dank, horrible, nasty entrance and up these horrible stairs. And you thought, you take people there, what the hell?
Where are we going? Yeah.
I'm going to get mugged. And then you'd open it up and they go, what? And it was just beautiful. And he'd spent a lot of money on design and everything, and it was just magnificent. So we used to hang out there. And it just so transpired that my office was about 200 yards away. So from that,
Accidentally.
well, nothing to do with me. He cited it. But so from then on, I would never have a meeting in the office. You know, I'd just say, well, if you want to meet me, we go to the man cave, and you'd have our meetings there during the day and at night or whatever. And you know, if it was an interesting person who liked wine, we'd crack a bottle and do it over that. So it became my quasi office as well, and it was just wonderful. Yeah. I don't know what's happened to that place actually, but you know, I'm still in touch with Tom. I'm sure it's still going. But,
I remember you told me it's going to be torn down. That's it.
Yeah, he did that. Then I think he might have reinstated it again. I'm not really sure.
But is he still there
Yeah, he's still there.
in Hong Kong?
Yeah, he's still there. I met up with him in Glastonbury. He came over for Glastonbury, and I was luckily able to repay his kind generosity by shelling him 6 Glastonbury tickets, which were like gold dust. You couldn't get them. He said, I want to go. Would I kind of bring the family? Yeah, sure. And then I said, listen, you've done so much for me. I need to give you these tickets, which were not cheap. And it was just a token gesture on my part. So it was good.
So that's how we got to Men's Cave. And that's how I started getting into wine more and more. Because now we were starting kind of doing these wine tastings with people I was coaching in LRC. And time to time, of course, Howard was giving me some wines from his cellar. I was like, okay, that's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. Okay, let's open that one. That's unbelievable. I'm like, what? And of course, you start falling in love with a great, great wine. And there was this one dinner, and that's about Howard's favorite wine, which is Benjamin Romeo 2001.
Yeah, pretty magnificent that.
So I was invited for dinner with, so it was 5 guys. 4 guys were crazy wine wankers. You know, they love these Bordeaux's and everything that has a label and it's all well known and so on. And then I ring up Howard and I'm like, okay, Howard, so I need a bottle of wine. So I have dinner with these guys. Can I bring something special? But it's going to be a blind tasting. So none of us knows what each of the guests have brought. So none of us going to know what wine I'm going to bring, but I have to bring something special. So he gave me that wine from the man cave. And I still remember his message. He's like, bring this, it's going to blow their socks off. And it did. So the wines that they brought were amazing wines. It was Kos, it was Insignia from it was, what else was there? It was amazing wines. And Howard's wine that he gave me was obviously not known for most of the people.
Yeah, I never did.
But when they post, so of course we had to rate all the wines that night, and that wine won. And when those guys posted in their wine chats the picture that wine was brought, everyone started asking, where the hell did you get it? Where is this wine? And Howard mentioned before there's only 12 bottles in Hong Kong and it's all in his cellar. And no one could get the holds of 2001. And people really, the real wine people really understood that, oh, this is that wine that we want to get our hands on.
Let me ask you the question that all the listeners going to ask now. What's the price for that bottle?
Oh, it wasn't particularly expensive. Well, at least in real terms. I think on first release, which is when I'd have bought it, it'd be about 70 euros.
70?
70.
But only 12 bottles and all in your fridge.
No,
yeah,
it was
this was sometime after release, so most of them have been drunk. But, you know, you can use this app called wine-searcher.com, Wine Searcher. So, you know, I use it to try and find Benjamin Romeo 2001. There's none in the world. So it dials up every single wine merchant, not every single one, but pretty well every single wine merchant in the world. You put a wine in and it'll tell you who's got it and at what price. You can't find it. But that's because it's now, 22 years later.
And now the approximate price?
Oh, it's difficult to say because you can't buy it.
No one has
put
it. Because after 2001, they changed the way they're making it. So it doesn't taste the same. They changed the barrels.
I found a couple of bottles over the summer in a wine merchant in Spain, and he sent me them both, and they were about 140. So still not huge
not that crazy.
And I drank one, and it was corked, and it was which was a big disappointment.
Probably would work for me. From those Georgian
from
stories.
The fizzy wines.
Yeah.
Nice
you
fizzy.
Might love it. Yeah, nice fizzy wine.
2001 fizzy
bubbling
wine.
away there.
Yes.
Fermenting again. Yeah, put some sugar in it and stir it up. Yeah. But yeah, it's it does draw you in and start taking up more money. But he mentioned something actually which called himself a wine wanker, right?
Full kit wanker.
Wine wankers.
Yeah, wine wankers. This is quite a funny story because that terminology was one I've mentioned, which is where you get it from.
Yeah.
And I hadn't heard this before, and I went down to South Africa with a really good friend of mine who loves his food and wine, and an Indian guy called Dilip Shahani, who's actually a small investor, an investor in Howard's Folly, the only investor. And so in Cape Town, you can eat magnificently for not very much money. You know, there's lots of Michelin star restaurants. I said, okay, I'm going to take you somewhere interesting for lunch today. So we go to the Heritage Hotel, which is a pretty rundown, low-rise building in the centre of Cape Town, and we get sat at the restaurant they have, and it's quiche, soup and salad, and he's looking at the menu and go, what the hell are we doing here when there's so many great restaurants? And I go, wait. So I get the waiter around and say, can I have the wine list, please? She brings the wine list. I look at the wine list. I go, no, I need the other wine list. Oh, you want the other wine list? Anyway, I knew, and he didn't, and most people don't, that the owner had an amazing cellar of really old South African wines going back over 50 years. And occasionally, if somebody came in there and asked for it, he'd give you his list from his private cellar and sell you a bottle from it. So this is what we did. So I picked this bottle of 1960s Warwick Estate, and the owner heard that I'd ordered it, and he comes out and gives it its own table, gets the candle out, starts decanting it. And there's this very elderly couple sat next to us who've been watching this with interest, and when he's left, she leans over, and turns out she's from the IPRY, the Independent People's Republic of Yorkshire, coincidentally, and leans over to me and goes, excuse me, and I said, yeah, can I help you? And she goes, are you a wine wanker? And I said, you know what, I've never heard that expression before, but I think the answer's got to be yes. And she said, oh, I just have a glass of the house red with a lump of ice in it. It does me lovely. And I said, okay, well, why don't you try a glass of this? And so I call the way back and give her a slug of this wine. She goes, oh, that's absolutely wonderful, isn't it? And I go, yeah, well, maybe you're a wine wanker now. Anyway, we leave it at that.
Why did you change your accent when she was speaking?
That's a
Yorkshire
Yorkshire accent, yeah. I can do it. I can put on a Yorkshire accent. It's not my natural default position, but when I get home and start talking to some of my farmer mates who you would find unintelligible, you start lapsing back into this Yorkshire speak. Yeah. It's a bit like this, lad, you know. And
Kyle Walker.
So anyway, yeah, we're drinking away happily, and half an hour later, the elderly couple get up to leave, and the old boy, who's been sat there saying absolutely nothing, comes round behind me and he goes, thanks a lot, mate. I've had her on house wine all her bloody life. Now look what you've done. You're going to cost me a bloody fortune, you are. And I sort of looked at him, I said, suck it up, mate. You got away with it so far. And he just walked off with that. And so that terminology has stuck ever since, you know.
The wine
wankers. And yeah, I think it describes it quite well, really.
Proper Englishman, eh?
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
But you see,
mate.
another person, he got into wine. And he gets people into wine in many different ways. Thanks a lot, mate.
Yeah.
But I think you took that probably from Howard and from wine experience, because during the first meeting, when I said that we spoke and you said, Jess, let's do it. When I went away, you gave me a bottle of Howard's Folly.
Mm-hmm. The Sonia d'Or 2018.
You like it?
Yes, I liked it. My wife hated it.
Really?
Not hated it. She doesn't like wine at all or alcohol.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I was like...
Wrong drink for her then, really, isn't it?
Basically water it is, but...
Yeah.
But not hated it, didn't like it. And I was like, try this red wine. It's really nice. And I really like it.
If you're not a wine person, it's very difficult. It doesn't matter what wine it is.
No, she's not. No, she just likes water. And
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but I really liked it. And I kind of switched my wine experience as well when I met some of my old teammates from Spain, because I have one really good friend, Edu, and he lives in Madrid, and his father is a really well-known doctor in Madrid, and he when I went there and he gave me a bottle of this red wine, and the wine experience there in his family was so different than we tend to have alcohol usage here in Latvia. And for me, it was like in Latvia, you just basically like the wine that hits you the most and gets you the.
I think I was like that at university. Bang for your buck is the expression that comes to mind.
But it's probably changing. Yeah,
it's changing a lot.
And then there in Spain, I experienced like kind of taking it slowly, probably. Although in the UK as well, when I have been in UK, people in the UK tend to be drunk after 2 hours when they start drinking. But overall, the experience, what I had in the wine business or in the winery here in Latvia, and then when I met him, and now as well, from the stories you guys have told, it's the experience you get, and through the experience you can start having some kind of practice. And then when you mentioned about it's kind of joke, but it is true. At first, if you like it, then it works. But then later you think, how did I like that?
Fucking it happens
wine?
A lot.
I remember when I bought my first apartment, I was in my apartment. I didn't have any furniture. Me and the guy who is our Jamie, we were sitting. I didn't have a sofa, but then I bought the sofa. I think it was after 1 month when I moved in, and I bought this wine. It was probably the cheapest wine because that was all I was left, and it didn't even had the normal like branding etiquette, how do you call it? And I was drinking that. And after like, I don't know, 3-4 years, I saw it at the grocery shop, and I was thinking, I was drinking that and enjoying that when I was there. But you grow with the experience you have with the wine. True?
You do. When I was growing up in England, I mean, I left England when I was 20 and have never lived in England since. But in those days, the best-selling wines were semi-sweet German wines, Pies Porter Mikkelsberg and Blue Nun. I remember.
Riesling?
Yeah, it was kind of a Riesling. I don't think Blue Nun was a Riesling. I'd say it was nicer to have none than drink Blue Nun. But anyway, it was huge selling. And then as people got used to it, their taste gets drier and they don't want sweet wine anymore, except, really sweet dessert wines, different thing. And they become more sophisticated and they get onto different things. And it starts, wine drinking population normally start on drinking fairly cheap stuff, but I think wine is different. You don't drink wine to get drunk. You drink wine to enjoy it. If you want to get drunk, you want vodka or tequila or whatever, and we all enjoy a bit of that occasionally. At least certainly I do. But you drink wine for a whole sensory experience, which is beyond that, and that's what gets you into these more expensive bottles, which help you develop that.
We have been talking about wine for 1 hour, but I wanted to ask. We are at MH Padel, me Howard,
yes.
Padel,
thank you.
Padel Club, and the second one is opening.
I'll let this fly.
Yeah, he will let this fly. At every Hills Media video, we're gonna start with me Howard Padel Club.
Or Mr. Howard would do.
Yeah, Mr. Howard. But basically, what we started speaking, Padel Club. You have a big business. You live in that time Hong Kong, but then later on Portugal, and then you think. It was the first you heard about Latvia when you met Matiss?
Yeah.
And then...
I mean, I knew it existed, but I've never been there.
And then you start speaking about Padel Club. And then some would say it's a philanthropy. Some would say it's maybe, from my experience, looking at the guy on the left and guy on the right, it's that I have the experience in... How do you say, in a football team? You like football as well. You said you're a Leeds United fan. And sometimes there's players in the team who kind of, how do you call that in English? They make jokes about one player, but they're kind of the bigger brother. And I kind of sense the same feeling here. He's like giving you compliments and you're just giving the jokes back. But then you start a business together. And now they're in Riga.
Okay, you might be putting me in the really difficult position of having to say something nice about him.
No.
If I start choking, this is what's caused it, okay? This might kill me.
Is your pulse going up?
Yeah, I think it must be. I think I'm feeling faint.
Not the wine.
I have a lot of different businesses, and that main sovereign business, which I say we now employ 600 people around the world, and it's enabled me to make a bit of money and given me opportunities to do other things. And as I said, it's pushing fresh air around in a circle. But I invest in people, really. It doesn't matter how good the business idea. If you've got an idiot running it, it's going to fail. And if you've got somebody good running a reasonably sound idea, then you start with a huge advantage. And more to the point is that I don't want to do business with anybody I don't like. I'm too old for that. And it's got to be an element of pleasure in anything I'm going to do from here on in. I don't need to do it to make money. I do it because I like it and it interests me. And fundamental in that is finding somebody who you can work with and is going to be honest, which is really important. You can't question that. If you're questioning that, just don't do it in the first place. B's got a bit of character so you can see it might work and understands and is good to work with. So that applies here. However much it pains me to say he's a good guy. He's a good guy, and yes, and he. I don't have to worry about his honesty, and he seems, he's got an economics background. So actually, when he came up with numbers, I was really quite surprised. I thought, this is a tennis coach coming up with this level of detail. This is quite impressive. So here we can work with that, and it's a similar model I do with a number of different businesses. I can put the money in and give it some time and attention, and I probably have something to contribute because I've got a wide experience in lots of different things, but I don't have the time or the inclination to get into the business and run it. So the deal is quite simple. You do all the work and I provide the money. And you always end up doing some of the work because if it interests you, you want to get involved to an extent where you can't just leave it alone and say, get back to me in a few years' time and tell me how it's gone. But I haven't got the time or the inclination to get into the minutiae of every day running of a paddle club in Latvia. I mean, it's not possible and I don't want to do it. So you need somebody who you can rely on and know that they're honest, because that can go badly wrong. Not dislike them intensely. Okay, we've had to relax on that one. And leave them to it. And, the chances are it's going to turn out well, but it's a similar philosophy. Do 10 of these funny little businesses which are not your mainstream and accept that possibly some of them will fail. Some of them wash their hands, but the good ones will go gangbusters. But this was pretty obvious. I mean, if the world is gagging for paddle courts and if there is none, it's only a question of time before the demand comes, because unless there's something really peculiar about Latvian people, they're going to want to play paddle. And if you're first in and you can put it on a sound basis and not go loony with the numbers, then it's almost certainly going to work. And of course, along the way, you can have bad luck and a lot of things can happen. Who could have foreseen COVID, which could have wrecked any business? But and that can happen again. We might get invaded or something, or Latvia might get invaded. These are things you're beyond your control, so don't worry about them. Because, there's certain things where if the world goes to shit, all bets are off. But so it's a rational decision based on certain parameters, which I'm happy to work with. But that summed it up, I think, quite well.
I think the guy behind the camera will have to cut one quote. You said if there's a guy who's a reasonable, I think you said he's a reasonable and he's a smart guy who likes the idea. He's gonna make the whatever business successful. And one of my favorite quotes is, straight translation into the English is, it's better to be great nails maker. Is a word in English?
Yeah.
It's nails maker than shitty lawyer.
Okay.
Because it's probably gonna make more money than if you're gonna be just shitty lawyer. No one's gonna want you.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Speaking about your business and you two guys, and I was after the first meeting with Matiss, I was thinking we have basically only sports clients. Our Hills media company, we work only with the sporting organizations, and some of my guys, because I used to play football, and some of my guys I know and my friends, and first thing they said, like, Latvia is quite small and the market's quite small. And then they said, you want to make a media company, make content, and only in sports. That's just so niche. Like you will not have clients.
Small market.
And then after,
But it's not true.
and it's basically after 1 month we reached the point where we didn't have capacity to fill
To do more.
do more. But it's not about us now. And I just remember after the first meeting, I just went home and I was thinking. Sometimes after we met with the clients, the feeling with the person, and you said you just want to do business with the person you like, and we met some persons and we kind of didn't like the feeling of the other person there, and then I went home after a meeting with Matiss and I was thinking, how is this guy here after, I don't know, we spoke about 15 minutes, I'm basically coming to him, pitch him, and I want money.
Money.
And I'm going to give a service to him. And he just basically was so honest first, I think honesty. And the other thing was like, you were so open-minded to grow. And then later on, I kind of understand my experience with you, because you said one quote, you want MH Padel to be the best club in Latvia. And basically, that's the reason why MH Padel is the best, because it's not the only MH Padel club. And whenever some of my friends say something and I say, man, if you haven't been to MH Padel, you haven't been to playing Padel. Because if you go, and I want to do critique a little bit you and take something from Howard. And you said, we did so many wine tasting with Howard together. You have to do it here more often. This is going to be the thing, what's going to be get me inside of this Padel club. But yeah, and after that, I had that feeling that basically you're a likable guy, and probably...
Thank you.
Yeah, and you're like a likable guy, and you have a reasonable kind of strategic thinking about your business, and it's rational sport. Because I mentioned in the pilot episode, what gets people in paddle, it's easiest to start. My wife loves it. I never play with her, but my wife loves it.
But also I want to mention, like, okay, you can call it this. It's like a cliche phrase, right? Make it the best club, whatever, right? You have to really focus on the small little things, and. When we did open this club, first of all, okay, there was nothing like it in Riga or Latvia. There was a four-court club that Alex Pavlon started years before us. And he was really the person who started the paddle movement, basically, in Latvia. But after that, of course, it was COVID, and it was kind of a perfect timing where... When I moved back, I went all around. There was actually nothing, and that really, it's not that it just created out of nowhere. I was very, very lucky to be in an environment in Hong Kong, where you are actually in one of the best members clubs in the world, and you can actually learn and see and experience how things are run. What do the members like? What they don't like? How to run the tournaments? How to interact with them? How to interact with the management? What do you do? It's a big, it's a big soup of things. And here, obviously, we haven't grown to that level yet because we were so new. But now, because we're opening the second club, we're going to have memberships. We're going to have a lot of different new features that I think that will give... It's a big word, best club. Every other club is also doing a lot of great things, and the main thing is to grow the sport of paddle.
Yeah,
so I don't want to label.
You have to aspire to be the best at anything you're doing, otherwise you're wasting your time. And actually, in my main business and every other business, I give them this example, which I think holds good for any business anywhere in the world. In fact, anything, and it's illustrated by reference to the England rugby team. When Clive Woodward came in 2001 and said, if we want to win the World Cup in 2003, we have to be 100% better. And there is nothing that we can change which is going to make us 100% better, but there are 100 things we can change which is going to make us 1% better. And if you accept this 1% philosophy that nothing is too small to be worthy of your intention if it's going to improve it, You see a bit of litter on the floor. Does it matter? They say not really, but if you pick it up, it's 1% better. So pick it up and put it away, and that is it. And if you give that attention to every single detail, you're going to be running a really good operation, and really good operations stand a much better chance of succeeding than bad operations. But I go into businesses and find that I can pick holes in them 1% in so many ways, and they're clearly not either buying into that philosophy or never heard it or whatever. And I don't want to be involved in businesses which don't appreciate that point of view and at least give it a whirl. And I tell everybody about that speech. They're probably bored senseless of hearing it, but it's if anybody new joins, they get that, and they get told this is what you need to do. You can't possibly go wrong with that in your mind. Even if you're never going to achieve perfection, you should constantly be striving for it. And if you do, you're going to stand a lot better chance of being successful than if you don't. So do it.
And I was very close of giving this example as well, because I still remember when Howard told me this. And it always stays in my head. They're just little things,
But
small, 1%, 1%.
since you guys are the owners, I will mention it, and I will not say the names, and maybe people will understand. But for me, the padel experience is going to be compliment, but basically the padel experience for me started because I have friends in Spain, and I heard that this new padel thing is growing in Spain, and there was this one club, and the one of my friend, he said, "Do you want to try to play padel?" And I have been the guy who's always like, "Yeah, let's try it." And I tried the padel, and I liked the padel, but at that time I was already having a business, and I was working in television. I had television job and a business, and as well I started a family, and I think my daughter was born at that time, so I didn't have a lot of time. And when I went to the first time when I played padel, when I came back from the changing rooms, I had sand on my feet, because next to the padel court there's a beach volleyball court, and I was thinking to myself, I really like the padel, I really like the experience, but I didn't like the experience off the court, because for me sometimes nowadays it's like I want to do nice sport, but then after the sport I want to have a sip of beer or sip of wine.
I want to have a nice facility,
I want to have nice shower so I can change. I was doing jiu-jitsu, but there was no changing rooms, and I was like thinking, I want to do this martial arts, but there's no changing rooms, and I want to have this little bit of comfort. So after the training, when I'm exhausted, so I feel normal. But then I had these sandy feet, and then later on, when I met Matiss, I came into this padel club, because padel for me was like there's a basic. First was outdoors actually, and then the next one was indoors with the beach. With the sands, and then I came to MH, and I was thinking, oh, you can actually do this as well. So, and for me, it was like a day and a night experience.
But we have to still give hands off to these people who, even
and it wasn't
in these
critique,
locations,
it was my
they
just
started,
experience.
they tried, they're still going, and they grew the sport till the moment that we were able to start with also these people coming here. You know, they did a lot of work before we came into the game. So,
and as well, this is the Matiss mindset, because you always said to me, more padel clubs in Latvia, the better for MH Padel, because then it's going to be more.
Well, of course, we
padel
spoke about it
players.
today in a car as well. Of course,
Yeah.
and a lot of that's why I can tell from my experience. You know, also not naming names, but when we opened, there was a lot of jealousy in there, and there's still a lot of jealousy in there, which it's very unproductive, first of all, because at the end of the day, we want to grow the sport. Okay, it's a business. But end of the day, if you look around, we have 8 courts, 32 players, people can play at the same time. This makes them healthier, right?
Yeah.
The main goal and end of the day for this sport is to give them fun, to get their brain working, which the sport does because you're constantly involved. And you move a lot, which makes the society healthier. And it's a very fun way of getting society healthy. So
Then we feed them full of alcohol afterwards.
that's why we have the bar.
And that's what he needs to do more.
Yeah.
Well, the most important thing in life is balance, right? So you have to balance it out after. But interesting, like as well, right? So Howard hasn't mentioned he's been playing padel for 30 plus years.
No. No, I might have played it once a long time ago, but I've only really been playing it regularly for maybe 10.
But you were in Gibraltar, but they were already in Spain. It was Padel.
Yeah, but I never really
Grande.
played it.
You didn't play
I was
it?
playing tennis a lot.
But it was
tennis.
already there.
Yeah, it was already there. I'd seen it.
So
And
it's
I might
been-
have had the odd game, but I only really I haven't played tennis for a couple of years because I much prefer playing paddle. But there was no paddle in Hong Kong, and I was there most of the times. I wasn't playing then. I might have had the odd game when I went back to my house in Spain on holiday. But no, I played a bit. But no, it's only in the last 3 or 4 years I've really played a lot. I actually put a court in my house in Yorkshire, and that was the first one in the IPRY, I think, or one of the first. And there's a bunch of lads who come around and play there. That got me started sort of semi-seriously. I mean, I wouldn't say I play seriously at all anymore, but I do anything very seriously anymore for that matter. But, it's that got it. So, no, it's much more recent than you're saying. I mean, I played a lot of tennis, and that was my main focus.
So that's
And
another
squash
thing,
and
right, where the
squash. I played
tennis
a lot of
story is
squash.
really coming in, because Howard was at the tennis. You could call it a tennis coach, but he was playing matches and sets. But that's another great story that Howard actually should mention, because I think that's one of the also connections that we might have had, because he was a tennis coach 40 years ago when he saw me in Hong Kong as a tennis coach as well, with maybe an ambition and aspirations that we want to do, because Howard built amazing business when he was basically 25 years old. When he was a tennis coach at that age, basically, right? So, and so what is your tennis coach, tennis experience?
Well, I was tennis coaching to earn some money when I needed some money. I was never going to remain a tennis coach, I don't think. And my playing, my play in tennis was club standard and never more. And so it was never going to be a career for me, as far as I was concerned. So it was just something I did to earn some money when I needed it. And I enjoyed it. It was fun, but I was never going to do it beyond a certain point in life. And I was doing it after I qualified as a lawyer. And you look at the economics of, which is going to make more money for me. That's not hard to work out. And yeah, I mean, the legal thing's been kind. But yeah, I've spent 40 years specializing in a particular area, and I'm very good at it, and it's earned me some money and allowed me to do these other things, which is maybe these days are a lot more fun and a lot more interesting. But it all got paid for by building a law business, what essentially is a law business.
And that's another reason why Howard is actually here this week, because his company chose Riga as a venue for annual
every year
conference.
we have a conference when we bring people from all over the world. It's like the 70 top people to a venue. Normally it's somewhere I haven't been but want to go. Normally in Europe, because there's a concentration of the offices in Europe, so we can keep the costs relatively economical by putting it there. That wasn't actually my suggestion, Riga, because I'd been to Riga, so I'd have actually naturally picked somewhere else. And then my CEO suggested Riga, and I thought, well, yeah, why not? And I don't know why he picked that, but
I always thought it was Howard's idea, and I just
yeah,
found
I
out
think
a
you
few
thought it was
days
my
ago.
idea. It
Yeah,
wasn't. No, it wasn't. And because I'd have picked somewhere I hadn't been, just I was looking at Georgia. Funny enough, I would always want to go to Tbilisi.
Tbilisi, yeah.
So that was on the radar, but he picked Riga, and I said, yeah, okay, we'll go with Riga then.
Well, this week it was 70 top people from Sovereign
Yeah.
having a conference and enjoying.
Yeah, it's 2 days of education, Thursday, Friday. So we lecture, and then the idea is a sort of bonding exercise in the evenings, aka a massive piss up. And these boys can drink.
And on that note, at the first pilot episode, Matiss was the first guy to say, I need to take a pause. So you guys can fill up the glasses, and if we need, we can take yeah, I'm going to go to the restroom.
You're not going to film that then?
We couldn't think anymore because we needed.
I needed...
You need to go and shake
Howard-
hands with the unemployed.
especially if you're married. Huh?
Yeah. You know the
Shake hands with an unemployed.
you'll like this joke. You're married, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So what's the similarity between your wife and a condom? They both spend a lot more time in your wallet than on the end of your dick. Yeah.
Especially with the years.
Yeah. Oh, the other one I liked. Actually, there's three goodies. Okay, don't think we can put these out for podcasts with a manner. What's the similarity between Tiffany jewelry and David Beckham?
Something with Victoria.
They
probably.
both come in a posh box. Okay. Or this might be a bit too English. What's the similarity between George Michael and a Wellington boot?
I have no idea who is George Michael.
You know George Michael, the singer. Of course you know George Michael.
No.
No? You know.
Well, I don't know the joke, but I know who he is.
Well, then the answer is they both get sucked off in bogs. Okay.
Too English.
Too
English.
What is box?
What is bog?
Well, a bog is a slang word for a toilet.
Oh, Jesus.
And it's also a bog, so if you put your Wellington boot in and lift it up, it gets sucked off by the mud. But yeah, okay, you have to understand the English slang,
Yeah,
otherwise it doesn't make sense. And when you have to explain it, it's gone, really, isn't it? It's too late.
Anyway, we get back to it.
Yes.
So we have to cover a little bit about Howard's other passion and giving back, and like you mentioned, philanthropy, but it's not philanthropy. He has a very
Well, I'm hoping MH Padel is not philanthropy. Yeah.
No, it's not.
No, that's what I said. It's like there's a myth that these kind of businesses, there's philanthropy, but
No, they're not. No, well, that's not the idea at all. But,
today,
for sure, any substantial business of size, I think these days, it's unacceptable not to have some kind of charitable or philanthropic element to it. And I wouldn't want to be involved in a business which didn't have that. So in 2003, in Hong Kong, I formed the Sovereign Art Foundation, as I was very interested in art, as a way of using art as a means of raising money to help disadvantaged children. And since then, we've raised $13 million, which isn't bad for a evening job, let's put it that way, and helped many thousands of children. But the first project we supported, which we continue to support, was in Cambodia, where there's a town called Sinukville, which had unfortunately become a centre for underage sex tourism. I don't know if there's a technical word for that. I don't think there is. Anyway, people are flying in because although the law in Thailand doesn't allow children to be sexually abused, they were allowing it there, if not encouraging it. So some friends of ours built a visitor centre and then invited us in to put in an arts programme, because kids who've been abused will not describe their experience for understandable reasons, but they will draw it or paint it, which is the start of a healing process. So we put an arts programme into this visitor centre, and at the same time assisted with a programme which persuaded all providers of accommodation that if anybody entered the accommodation with a child, they had to prove it was their own. And so we've, through these joint initiatives, eradicated that problem in that town. I hope it just hasn't gone somewhere else, but at least, you do what you can. And that was the start of programs all around the world which have not had to deal with that grotesque problem, but have used art to help kids who have learning difficulties, behavioural difficulties, get back into mainstream education. And as you'll understand, if you can't if you can't enjoy mainstream education, you have basically no chance in life, or very little. So that's the key, to make sure that they can get back into mainstream education, have a chance in life. So we're dealing with kids who otherwise couldn't do that. And the connection with the wine is that as I started both businesses at the same time, I pledge that I'd give 20% of the profits of the winery to the foundation to help with these programs. I've never actually made any money, so that promise proved to be futile. So instead, we've given regular donations, and we don't actually go to the point of calculating it to the nth penny. But I think we probably give 20% of revenue to the charity, which might be why I'm not making any money out of the wine business. But the nice thing, and something we do make a point of telling people about these days, because for years I didn't, because I thought this is a personal thing and you don't want to wear the hair Satan, ram it down people's throats. But about 5 or 6 years ago, we mentioned it to our Portuguese agents, that there was this connection between the wine and the charity. And they said, well, why aren't you talking about this? And I said, well, because I thought it was a personal thing. And they said, well, you've got to talk about it. So now we do talk about it all the time. So every bottle supports the foundation, and we use the labels are art labels, and they're either labels done by professional artists who've helped with the charity, of which there have been many, or children who we've helped through the charity. So I've conveniently brought a few bottles over here, and the white wine on the end there, that's a label done by a 3-year-old who we taught in Hong Kong. The one next to it, the red cap, is done by a 3-year-old who we taught in Hong Kong. The green cap, on the other hand, is done by a sadly deceased professional artist called Howard Hodgkin, whose paintings now fetch many millions of dollars. And there's a story about that one. But yeah, and the magnum of red we're consuming, the label on that one was done by a very famous artist from Hong Kong called Frog King. He gets very upset if you refer to him as the Frog King. He's Frog King.
Frog King.
And he's 80 years old and dresses in clothing not dissimilar to the art, and looks like he's been
Everyone can Google
paintballed.
just Frog King Hong Kong.
Frog King Hong
And
Kong.
you're going to see the craziest guy.
He's one of the few great artists Hong Kong has produced, I suppose, although increasingly that's changing. But yeah, there's a very close connection between the wine, art, and charity, which I like a lot.
Well, you started this conversation and about the charity work. I wanted to ask you. You mentioned that you wanted your businesses to be involved in that, but I want to ask, where did it start? Because I remember my daughter was born in 2021, and when she was born born prematurely.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
how we call. And she stayed in intensive care for 1 month. And after this 1 month, the things I saw there later on, I till that time probably I never kind of gave my thought to charity and some kind of donations. And I remember me and my wife, when we left the hospital, I have a football podcast, and I said that I'm gonna donate €1 for every comment or something like that. And we donate at the end of the month. We donated to that intensive care, because I saw what those ladies did to those little children that were born prematurely. But where did it start for you? Because there was my thought, and maybe for you as well.
Yeah, I don't know what the lightning moment was when we got involved. I suppose you reach a certain size when it's time to start giving a bit back. And so for me, it was 2003, and I can't point to anything in particular which led me down that path, except maybe the defining moment was I could afford to do it and wanted to pay attention to it. But, government should really fix this stuff, which charities take care of, but they never have. There's different sort of theories about charity, because I think one of the original worldwide charities was the Red Cross, and at the time that started, there was Florence Nightingale going and putting in hospitals during the Crimean War. And she came up with a modern theory of nursing, didn't she, which was hygiene above all else. But there was a lot of resistance to it, because by doing that, there's an argument that you facilitate war. You make war more affordable and less damaging, and therefore prolong it. But, and you can always argue that, these different theories, but I think sometimes you just see things which need fixing and nobody else is going to fix them. So get on and fix it yourself. maybe let's do it. And that was it. There's another theory which I wouldn't say is wrong, that nobody does anything for other than selfish reasons. Mother Teresa in the streets of Calcutta was fixing up beggars because basically she got a buzz out of it. But, thank God there are people there who get a buzz out of doing good work rather than just enriching themselves. And, I have to say I'm doing it because I love doing it. So it's a selfish reason. But as I say,
you help others at the same time.
Yeah, I don't think it does any harm that you are helping people for selfish reasons. You've got to do it for some reason. And, I also sort of thought, well, if heaven and hell do exist, I've got very little chance of going upstairs unless I do something about it.
You have to switch the ratio.
Yeah, you got to give yourself a batting chance. I mean, maybe it doesn't apply in my case because I'm not a religious person, although, as Matiss knows, I am actually an ordained religious minister. But it is in the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. And this is
You're going to look it up. This is all true.
And we believe, I think, that the world was made by his holy noodliness, the flying spaghetti monster. But he did it in one day, not 7, like it says in the Bible. And he was a bit pissed when he did it, which is why it's all fucked up. And we also
probably Italian, eh?
Yeah, well, he might have been. I mean, it does. We are known as pastafarians, and pastafarianism is our philosophy. But it also embraces other things, such as the only other tenet of this religion is that global warming is directly correlated to the number of pirates in the world. And if you think about it, it must be true, because I think we all accept now that global warming is accelerating, and there are a lot more pirates around than there used to be.
It has to be.
That's proof. That's proof.
It has to be.
Yeah. But actually, that religion was started in America, like a lot of the balmy ones were, and it was done with a serious point in mind. I don't think I've told you this before, but there was a law passed, or a regulation, or whatever, a bylaw in America, or in some states at least, that creationism had to be given the same classroom time as Darwinism, as evolution. And there was, some people who thought, well, this is bonkers, isn't it, to try teaching our kids that some unknown being created everything that swims in the world and flies around in 7 days, like it says in the Bible. I mean, it's clearly nonsense, and things evolved over millions of years. So if we're going to teach the kids that nonsense, we might as well teach them pastafarianism. So he created this religion as a sort of protest about these two. And I thought, I quite like this. I'll get into some of that. So I joined up, and then pretty soon got a letter saying that if I gave them $35, they'd make me a minister. And I said, yeah, I'll have some of that now. So I now have the right to appoint, ordinary people if they'd like to join the religion. I can make you a pastafarian right now.
So if he wanted to...
I have joined.
You joined?
I got the certificate and everything.
If you wanted to get married right now in MH Padel Club... Could you be able to?
I could officiate. Yeah, he'd have to dress as a pirate, but that's no big deal.
Johnny Depp.
And you need to have a rum in your glass, but it's doable, huh?
Yeah, I mean it's perfectly doable. Whether the rest of the world would recognise that as a legal marriage is another issue.
But you're a legal guy.
Yes.
And you can turn it around.
Yeah, that's right.
Howard's going to fight it. He has all resources to fight that one.
But it came to my attention, this religion, because there was various court cases around the world where people had fought for the right to have their ID photograph or their driving license photograph. I don't think they've ever won on a passport, but an official ID photograph wearing our religious dress, which is a colander on your head, a spaghetti strainer on your head, in the same way that a Sikh can wear a turban in his ID. And these cases were totally 100% won. The rights were granted because it was part of our religious dress. And I thought, I like this. This is good. So I joined up.
Okay, back to the charity thing.
Yeah.
Speaking about the charity, and you said, and you mentioned that, of course, you like doing it and you enjoy doing it.
Yes.
And about the art, because if, as I mentioned before, if you're a newbie not the wine wanker.
Yeah.
If you're a newbie at wines, at first you think, oh, that guy, he enjoys that, and he thinks that this wine has this, and he's a wine wanker. But the same kind of, you found the both wine business and the art business, which can be, okay, this piece of art is like, I don't know, $20, euros, whatever, and this one is like millions, and the same kind of the same sense of business where your imagination puts up the price.
Yeah, it is all in people's imagination and perception. You're right, because a lot of goods or things you can buy are valued according to the cost of production. You know a Rolls Royce is expensive because it's very expensive to make, and it has a scarcity value. Art is not like that. The cost of production is normally minimal. The cost of producing a painting which sells for millions of dollars is very little different to one that sells for $500. The cost of the paint and the canvas is going to be the same.
Yeah.
So it is all perception, and it's extraordinary. And it is, I have a very keen interest in art, and I collect art, and I collect it because it gives me pleasure, and I've always found it's a lot more pleasurable putting money into buying a nice piece of art than buying a BP share certificate, which you can't look at, you can't feel, you can't touch. It doesn't give you any pleasure at all. The only pleasure it gives you in its monetary value when it goes up, and if it goes down, it's not pleasurable at all. Art, at least, you can put it on the wall and get great pleasure out of it. So I collect art. I collect art from student art, from kids' art to world-famous painters, and I really liked it, and I started collecting a lot of it, and then thought, how can I turn this hobby into something where we can raise money and apply it for charitable purposes, and came up with a model which we're still using today. And the main fundraising activity actually is we run art prizes around the world. So we have an Asian one, an African one, and more recently a Portuguese one. And the Portuguese one probably doesn't make a lot of sense, except that's where I'm living, so I wanted to do something there. And we also run schools prizes around the world. But the model is that we appoint independent nominators who go and find us the best artists working in their particular region. So in Asia, obviously. And through that process, we get 400 or so entries. We narrow it down to 30, have an exhibition, and then sell the 30 finalists, with half going to the artists, so they'd get what they would through a gallery, except because we've got a charitable element, people tend to pay a little bit more for it, or don't mind paying a bit more. So it's normally done at a drunken auction or whatever. And the other half, the gallery bit, if you like, the bit the gallery would normally take is applied directly to helping disadvantaged children and goes to the Sovereign Art Foundation. So that's the process which has generated this money. And then donations and people giving us money and some government grants and other things. But art therapy is now a mainstream science. It has been in the US for many, many years. Europe was sort of embracing it to some degree. It was very new in Asia, and I think originally people made the mistake of thinking that what we were doing is giving Johnny or Jenny a nice day out and painting a pretty picture, and that was it. Which, nothing wrong with that, of course, but that wasn't it. What we were doing was transforming lives by getting them back into mainstream education and sorting out real and current problems. We actually, as part of a grant we were given by the Hong Kong Jockey Club, which itself is a charity, we had to produce a 3-year study which was conducted by Hong Kong University, which demonstrated the effects of this, and the effects were transformational. And, it's funny with these charity things, because they shouldn't be necessary, really, because, as I say, governments, in theory, should sort it all out. But, take Hong Kong, for example. It's the, I think, still something like the 7th biggest trading nation or richest country in the world. Don't quote me on these figures, but if they're slightly out, the illustration is true. And there's 7 million people live in Hong Kong. And you can go around Hong Kong Island and you think, this place has got more money than God. But amongst 7 million people, according to government statistics, which are not going to be adversely critical to themselves, 1.2 million of those are living under the poverty line. And of those 1.2 million, 250,000 are children. And of those 250,000 children, we estimate, although there's no official statistic, about 20,000 have severe learning difficulties, which mean they'll never escape that poverty trap, although are most unlikely to. So what we're doing is helping those children. I think through a program we initiated called Teach the Teacher, we're now reaching most of those. Because originally we were doing these art therapy and art classes and artistic activities, but we could barely touch the surface. We were getting to about 10% of that number due to the lack of resources. But now Teach the Teacher, we're teaching the teachers the benefits of this form of teaching. And in that way, we think we're reaching pretty well all of them. So it's been fairly transformational.
Maybe quite a difficult, a hard question, but sometimes when you think about charity and you experience those things and you see not the best world, because it can be quite hard on your kind of thoughts about why these things are like this, and you can't control everything in your life. Does it happen with the charity that you think, okay, I'm solving these problems and I want to help these kids in your example, and then the problems just keep growing because you want to help more, and it's the same in a business because you want to help more, and the people around you say we can do this and we can do that, and then basically it grows. But in the same time, it takes your time, it takes your effort, it takes everybody's effort, and it's a never-ending battle, maybe.
The battle will never end, and until there is nobody who needs any help, and $13 million, I think, is one hell of a lot of money, but it's tiny in comparison to what charities worldwide are raising. and they would all say, as would I, we're only scratching the surface, and we're not solving these problems. But you can do nothing or you can do something. And clearly, all charities want to do something. And so they achieve something, and that's the best you can do. You just do what you can. There is an infinite amount of work to do, which even if you times that sum by 1 million, you would hardly scratch the surface. And you'd want to help every child out of poverty. But it's just never going to be possible for anybody, so you just do what you can. And it's a tiny contribution to the overall problem. And it's just one of many, many problems. So you can't really expect to make a significant difference to the world, but you can make a little bit of difference to part of the world, and that's good enough for me. It's a start, and it's not good enough. That would give the wrong impression. But
to get involved.
Yeah, but it's better to make a small difference than no difference, and that's the philosophy.
And other difficult questions. Well, you mentioned those, for example, that town in Cambodia. Has it ever been like that? It's too hard for you on psychological level to experience that kind of stories that you kind of don't even. I don't want to say don't want to hear, but like you don't want to get involved because it's too hard maybe to listen to those horrific stories.
No, I've never felt that. I've felt angry that it's happening and revulsion that it's happening. I mean, it's beyond my comprehension that anybody would fly across the world with the sole purpose of interfering with an underage children for sexual satisfaction. I just can't understand it, really, but I know it's happening. And that something needs to be done about it. And I mean, I'm sure, like many people, your immediate reaction, well, I know what to do with it. And it involves an axe, But that's not the way the world works. And again, you just say, well, you do what you can. You just do what you can. I mean, a pleasing aspect was that some of the kids we taught when we started this, where are we now, 2023, 20 years ago, came back as teachers. So that something good has happened there. If you needed proof, that is the proof. And I don't think we did need proof. It was self-evidence that you were making a difference. But you're right, it's a drop in the ocean, really.
I wanted to raise a glass. I think, I don't know about the business side, the money side, the financial side, but this has to be the one reason to raise a glass, and about the WhatsApp picture, because you had the WhatsApp picture that you don't remember eating a fucking legend. And and this story about basically, even if it's 1%, you said small details, and if there's junk on the floor, you have to pick it up and put it there. So yeah, cheers.
Well, we'll drink to that. Yeah. And it's, I do say to people, actually, look, you're not going to buy my wine if you don't like it. But if you've got a choice of 2 wines, one is going to make a difference in this small way to the world in some way. So buy that, buy this one. And I think that's fair comment. Yeah. Without being too mercenary about the thing.
Right here, I'm going to mention for all the viewers and listeners as well. Same thing is happening at MH Padel. So we do sell Howard's Folly wine only because we do have a chance to support disadvantaged children, and
look, I don't know how
can do it as well.
How Howard's Folly can be involved in the Hills Media company, because we are a sporting company, and the wine together with the sports.
It works so well.
Then it will find a way, because it's and that's actually one of the things I wanted to mention. You said about the wine is the personal experience. If you like it, then you like it. And for my experience, I always said it. I still have some kind of bottles which I had taken photos of. I don't have an recollection of how they've tasted, but I have a feeling in my stomach, because I was with friends, and I probably will remember this bottle because I was speaking with you guys, and I have one bottle. I remember I was in Madrid speaking with this guy Edu, and with his father, and we were having a best conversation. I have this photo of that bottle. Then later on, I tried the bottle in Riga, because we had that bottle. I was thinking, this is this wine, but the emotions were there. And then basically the same's happening here, because when I hear these stories, I want to ask one of the things I want to ask. We hear about the Sovereign Group, we hear about the charity work, we hear about the Hong Kong stories, now MH Padel. And if you look back at your early days in England, in UK, and many people who start this entrepreneurship, they want to see the differences, the key aspects. But if you look at your personality, and you be your own kind of a Netflix guy, imagine if you're with the producer and looking at the guy, okay, we need to put out 3 things which helped you in your life, not only in business but in life itself, to grow outside of your comfort zone.
I had quite an interesting job when I was at university, which brought home quite a lot of things to me. And I was a dustbin man, right? In 2 summers I did this work. And they had the time and motion in one stage, which I know why this is. And you walked 26 miles a day and lifted 6 tons. And it was really fucking hard, I tell you. I was quite a fit guy in those days. And the first 3 days I thought, I can't do this. It's just too hard. And there was these guys who were doing it every day. And you just thought, Jesus Christ. And it involved walking down the garden path, lifting a heavy metal dustbin and putting it on his shoulder. And after 2 days, your shoulder was a mess. It was like lacerated. And to start with, I used to have a sort of little pad, which everybody thought was actually not okay for a Yorkshireman to be wearing a pad on his shoulder. So I got a lot of shit from the dustbin men for that. But Jesus, that was hard work. And I was a student, so in those days you didn't get taxed on the money you earned. And I remember quite well, I used to get £90 a week. And so 40 years ago, that was pretty decent money. But I was working with guys who had a wife and 3 kids and were getting taxed and taking home £75 a week. And I thought, Jesus, don't ever tell me the working man isn't working hard and that this is okay, this is differential. And it taught you a few things, that did. It really taught you the value of hard work and the meaning of hard work. And that was quite interesting. And also, what was quite interesting was I did that before I went to university and during university. And the poorer the household, the more good gear you found in the dustbins. I quit my whole flat out of gear you'd find in dustbins you'd pick up from the shittiest areas. And if you went to the slightly posher ones, you got nothing. And you find toasters, and all that was wrong was the fuse needed changing. I got tennis rackets, I got squash rackets, I got a sandwich maker. I got some quite decent furniture, watches, everything. You could basically equip your life out of it. And the poorer the household,
The
more good stuff you got. And it was just like, why is this happening? And I suppose it was, to a degree, lack of education in that you can fix stuff. I don't know. It was quite bizarre. But the guys who worked there were funny as hell.
So basically, one thing we feel
hard work.
hard work, but understanding the hard work as well.
Yeah,
not just
well, I
doing
think
it.
also understanding that it wasn't my natural consistency mixing with dustbin men. You got to understand them quite well and realise that these are pretty good guys as well, and gave you a different aspect on life. I think it was transformational for me, and I'm not expressing very well why, and I'm not sure that I can. But when I look back, I'm pretty proud of that work I did. But it was fucking shitty work. And actually, when I was relief dustbin man, so when somebody went on holiday, I took over, except there was one really hard cart called the six-wheeler. So anybody from one of the other carts, they'd just leap off the six-wheeler into the easier cart. So I was always on the six-wheeler. It was like, you fucking student arsehole, you know. And I think they thought I was a bit posh because I had this accent, which is not typical Yorkshire, you know. And and then they got to accept you, and they were good lads. But if there was nobody off on the bins, so there's no holiday guy, they put you on different jobs. One of which was the delight of going round the houses who didn't have mainstream drainage and emptying their outside toilets into a bucket. That was called the shit cart. Now that I did not enjoy, I can tell you. That I did not. And I remember one time, actually, this is quite amusing, when there was nobody off, so we ended up painting railings on the Hornsea, which was a seaside town seafront. And it took ages to get organised to go and paint these railings because there was sort of deliberate go slow as you drove from the depot to get to the seafront, and then I'm painting away. And the foreman comes along and goes, "What the fuck are you doing?" I go, "Well, what's wrong?" And he goes, "Have you seen how many railings you've painted?" And I go, "Oh, sorry, I'll speed up." "No, you arsehole, you're going too fast. You're making the rest of us look bad. Fucking slow down, will you?" "Oh, all right." I think I'd done 6 in an hour or something. I thought I was just taking it really easy, and he was going, "You bastard." So, yeah, gave you also an insight into how government employees can sometimes work, you know. But yeah, it's all changed these days. I mean, in England now you have to put it all in a plastic bag at the end of the road. But these days you used to walk down the pavement, put it on his shoulder, empty it, walk back. It was tough as hell, I tell you.
And one thing was that, and as well, speaking about business and financial stuff, one thing what popped into my mind was that you mentioned your conference and stuff that you did during these days, during this week. I once attended this. I think it was called Millionaire Mindset or something like that. There was a conference in Lithuania, and it used to happen in UK quite often as well. And from the conference, I don't remember much, but there was one thing which still is with me. It was like 8 or 10 years ago, which I still use. Basically, is that you put your financials into the financials in jar system. For example, if the money comes in, I don't know, 1,000 euros, you put 500 in the rent, and you take 10% in the savings, 20% in that, 30% in that, and I still use it till this day. Yeah. And it was from that conference. And maybe you can give, from your experience, maybe something similar, like a practical advice or tip or something you use in your daily life as a maybe it's not financial, maybe it's a daily thing in lifestyle. I don't know, you wake up and do this or that. Some kind of stuff which you do daily.
Oh, I'd have to think about that. But what I do know is there's no substitute for a face-to-face meeting, and I think we've gone a bit too far in avoiding that in a way. And one of the reasons that we bring everybody together once a year is because we find that they work much better together if they've met each other. And with a diverse group with offices all around the world, this face-to-face meeting concept, I don't think there's any substitute for it. And I know that a lot of people when they start are a bit shy about getting out there and meeting people. And that I would say is crucial to any business, that you actually meet people. and you get a lot more out of it.
Personal interaction,
Yeah,
personal
personal
relationships. Yeah.
And it's working from home, Zoom calls instead of meetings. A lot of correspondence on email, which I have to use as a lawyer because you need to document everything that you're saying. But that's a different aspect. But having ringing up a client, taking him out for lunch or something, you'll always get more out of it than writing to him, ringing him up, or doing a video call. So don't lose sight of the value of personal interaction, I would say, is a really important thing. And I think we are starting to do that, and it's not going to help. Good businesses won't do that.
Because that's really, when you have that, when you're going out with a client or whatever person, you get this personality interaction. And it's not only about the thing that you're supposed to talk about or to deal with, you get to see a person. Because
and
in
explore
some
other
way it
avenues,
comes
things
out.
you can do together, which or they can do with you, or you can do with them. But you're never going to really get that. I mean, a video call might start with a bit of chit chat, but then you get down to business. Whereas sitting with lunch with somebody, it's a lot about chit chat. And you learn something about them, and they about you, and then you start to realise, well, why aren't we doing this together? What are these other opportunities? And there's no substitute for that. So,
And at the end of the day, it's not only about business, right? You want to be seeing who are you dealing with, what kind of person.
You want to work with people you like, as Howard mentioned.
Yeah. And I suppose these days, as a lawyer, I'm only going to deal with clients who I actually like as well. But I'm probably in a lucky position there because I can cherry pick a bit at this stage.
COVID was really good for introverts, right? They were like,
Yes.
I don't have to meet anyone. I can stay home, and I can just do Zoom calls or reply to email.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how we go forward. But I think the general mood amongst big companies is they want them all back in the office because they've realised it works better.
But I think it's more productive as well.
I would say so. Yeah.
Because
It's more human, I think.
let's be honest, people, just the average guy when he's at home, or average lady when she's at home, some of the time she's basically, I don't know, at the sofa. Maybe the thing is open and she's like, okay, I'm gonna take 1 hour off, and but just the average.
I think it can work really well because if you are working from home and you're not at fixed hours, maybe you're doing more hours, and because you can pick and choose, you can take a break, go for your exercise, take the dog for a walk, go and pick up your shopping or whatever. When otherwise you wouldn't be able to do that. But you might work later, and you might work harder, and you might work longer. So it can work in certain circumstances, I think, and to the advantage of the employer and the employee. And there should be a balance in that relationship. But I still think that I can't imagine how you can build a business without having it fundamentally based on personal interactions you've made with people, and then you can let that telephone and email correspondence take over. But I just can't imagine how you can build a business without getting out there and meeting people. And if you can, I can't imagine how that couldn't be done better, quicker, and more successfully with that personal interaction. And there is an element of starting to lose that and it becoming the rarity rather than the norm. And I think that's a mistake.
That's one thing I actually wanted to ask in the first part, because me and Matiss were big time golfers. We still think that we can be PGA.
Do you play golf?
Do you play golf? Do you play golf? That was my.
I'm still sexually active.
And
you wanted that reply, didn't you?
Of course I did.
Yeah.
one of the guys, actually, I will not mention his name, but good friend of mine, his father, he owns a business, and he said he doesn't play golf because these fucking business wankers only thing that they speak about on a golf course is fucking business. I want to take a pause and just chill and take sport. But what I want to say about golf, we actually played in the MH Padel sponsored tournament.
Yeah, I told Howard as well. We were sponsoring the golf tournament.
It was
Howard's Folly and MH Padel.
Yes,
It was both.
Yes,
Okay.
and we played in that tournament, and basically for next, I would say 6 months, Matiss is still better playing than I am.
Yeah.
But then I will overtake him. But during that tournament, he was a better player with a better handicap. So at the first tee, when we took the shot, I took the first shot at the bush. This bush, and Matiss comes and he's like, "Yeah, there's your ball." I was like, "I see my ball." And then basically, I don't know what happened. Maybe because I was playing with my partner, because I was playing with my friend as well, but because tournament altogether, I don't know, first 4 or 5 holes, they were just horrific. But then, it was different tournament because I was playing with Matiss, but then basically the front 9 I played awful, like I played like I was amateur. But then the back 9 I was playing super, super good. But the best thing was about that tournament is that I saw how Matiss reacted to basically to me playing bad and then playing good. And later on I was thinking, okay, some people really get on my nerves on the golf course. And
Matiss is one of them.
No.
I was like, where's this going? Where's this going?
You know, sometimes like I was started swearing, and one was like, "It's good." So I'm thinking, no, it's not fucking good. But no, and I was actually thinking that his attitude didn't change during the really shitty holes and the really good holes. And golf can turn you into the devil probably sometimes on the course. But I was after the tournament, I was thinking, okay, it's really, really, really good experience to have your partner, your friend, whatever, maybe if it's, I don't know, daughter's next husband, to bring. It's probably the same on the, I don't know, during the meal or something like that, just to have the experience. And I was going away from the tournament, I was thinking, no, Matiss did good, it was fine. And we ended everything with the Howard's Folly wine.
Yeah, we did.
Very sensible. Very sensible. I'll tell you a golfing joke now, which we can edit out later. But yeah, I think you'll like it.
Staying in.
This is staying in.
Well, okay, it can. So the guy goes to the golf course, and he's new, and he goes, "Listen, I want to play around, but I keep losing balls. Have you got a spotter who can spot the balls when I hit them off into the rough and everything?" He goes, "Oh yeah. We got a brilliant guy. We'll send him down. He's got the best eyes in the club, and he does this for all the members." Okay, so he goes, "Go down to the first tee, and we'll send him down." So he goes down to the first tee, and this old guy rocks up. He's like 90 years old. He's got big, thick glasses, and he goes, "Oh, I'm Bob. I'm your spotter." And the guy looks at him and goes, Look, I don't wish to be rude, but I needed somebody with keen eyesight who's going to be able to find the balls when I hit them in the rough." And he goes, "Yeah, that's me." He goes, "Really?" He goes, "Well, this was not really what I was expecting." He goes, "Listen, I'll prove it to you." He goes, "You see that tree up there, 200 meters on the left, the big oak tree?" "Yeah, I can see that." And he goes, "Well, you see, if you go up 3 branches from the bottom, there's a big, heavy bough which goes out to the right." "Yeah, I can see that." "Do you see halfway along it, there's a sparrow? It's just sat on the twig on there." And he goes, "Well, I can kind of make it out." And he goes, "Well, you see it's lost one of its toenails." He goes, "Geez, I can't see that at all. All right, sorry, I shouldn't have questioned you. Clearly you've got great eyesight." And he goes, "All right, well, should we go?" And he goes, "Yeah." So he tees off. It goes way off into the left, into the rough. And he goes, "Did you see it? Did you see it?" And he goes, "Of course I did." And he goes, "Where is it then?" And he goes, "Can't remember."
We'll finish with this one.
Yeah.
We'll finish with a golf joke.
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
Thanks,
It's been
guys,
a pleasure,
for the podcast.
gents.
Howard, thanks for joining.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I think we have to finish because the Magnum's empty.
I know.
But it was lovely silky gear, wasn't it, at the end? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for the wine, and good luck with the charity, first
Thanks.
of all. And not for the taste, for the memories, right? Cheers.
It's all about it. Thanks
Cheers.
See
very
you
much.
next episode.
Bye.
Cheers. Thank
Bye.
you.
Good night.